we honour the Green Room Award, actually acknowledges your contribution to the health and wealth of art here and stagecraft here in Australia. The role of artist, is that is terribly important because we're the ones that influence. We tell the stories, truth in history via the arts and etc. I think in the future there's going to be very many stories performed by the artist about. I want to direct them towards to imploring, writing about history, forgotten, hidden, denied, local history, state history, federal history, and that. So it's a job of performers to be available and to think seriously about how they can contribute towards. That's what we do. We perform and we educate people. It's for the edification of the majority of people that are sitting with their bums on seats. They have conversations amongst themselves with their family about what they've seen, etc. So this is education. So that's terribly important. And the artist, the songmen and women, the people who decorate the sets and that, these we can't do without. And they're continually doing something. At home, they continue to do their artwork and etc. But once called upon to decorate a set, to do a picture that's going to impact, as a stage, for a stage performance piece, our artists are now in much demand, and we honour and respect them, and they're up for awards too.
Yeah, just remember who I am again. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see how we go.
Yes, we're not doing a television cop drama.
But if at any time you change your mind and decide it just needs to be up and neat for the green screen, let me know.
I almost had it. It's getting dressed up to...
You cannot stop art and you cannot stop culture. That is one thing I learned from the year. So that's.
My name is Mark Pritchard and I'm a dramaturg and I'm the chair of the Independent Theatre Panel. The Independent Theatre Panel sees work across Melbourne's independent sector. We see devised work, we see text-driven work, we see work that's collaborating with international artists, we see work in a whole range of different spaces and different forms, so we really get to see the breadth of what Melbourne's independent theatre landscape has to offer. So there's 15 panellists on the Independent Theatre Panel, and we've got actors, directors, dramaturgs, producers, critics, people who have such a range of skill and have all got extensive experience making work in the independent sector, so they understand what it's like to make work in Melbourne and have a vested interest in the future of the sector. The independent sector is constantly expanding, it's so dynamic, there's so much interesting work that's happening kind of off the radar or at the edges of the radar. So I see our role as being about seeing that work, putting it on the map and having a conversation about it, and really celebrating all of the kind of diversity and dynamism that the sector offers. For 2020, with such a breadth of work in theatres and in digital spaces, we had to really think about how artists were working, what constitutes theatre was a huge question, and how can we celebrate the ways in which artists have changed the way they work and how people are pushing into different forms. We boiled the awards down to 6 awards instead of our usual 10, and tried to find the best way of acknowledging the incredible excellence that has happened throughout the year. We had lots of conversations about the different roles that designers were playing and how we found a lot more kind of collaborative nominations where the line between set and costume and lighting all became kind of blurred and really interesting. We also found that a lot more collaborative work really needed to be acknowledged. So what an ensemble was not just about a group of performers, but actually about an ensemble of makers. So that was super interesting. I think one of the big questions was that kind of how do you see digital work and in theatre work on the same kind of spectrum, and how do you put those performances and practices up next to each other? But in a way that actually became really exciting, and we found that we're able to kind of see great work happening in both spaces that are of kind of equal standards of excellence. So it was a pretty incredible year for the work. The first award is for Best New Writing, and there are 5 nominees in this category. First nominee is Kim Ho for the great Australian play, Theatre Works and Montague Basement. Then David Finnegan for Are You Ready to Take the Law into Your Own Hands? Sipet Lawan Ensemble in association with Arts House. Cheryl Ho for Luo Ye Guigun, Getting Home, Cheryl Ho and Rachel Lee. James Jackson, Elizabeth Brennan and Justin Gardam for Bad News, The Bloom Shed. And David Williams for Smaller, presented by Arts Centre Melbourne in association with Melbourne Fringe. And the recipient of the award for Best New Writing is David Finnegan for Are You Ready to Take the Law into Your Own Hands? Sipet Lawan Ensemble in association with Arts House. The next award is for Best Design. Now this category covers set and costume design, sound, lighting, digital animation and production design. And there are 5 nominees in this category. September Barker for lighting and sound design on Shadowpiece, Tedious Theatre. Rachel Lee, Vanessa Bong and Brooke Lee for lighting design, illustrations and animation on Luo Ye Guigun, Getting Home, Cheryl Ho and Rachel Lee. Justin Gardam for sound design on Paradise Lost, The Bloom Shed. Justin Gardam again for sound design on Bad News, The Bloom Shed. And The Wholesome Hour for the production design of The Wholesome Hour, Popa Moko. And the recipient of the Best Design is The Wholesome Hour, production design for The Wholesome Hour, Popa Moko. The next category is for Best Ensemble, and there are 4 nominees. This Bitter Earth, Theatre Works and Bub. The Wholesome Hour, Popa Moko. Paradise Lost, The Bloom Shed. And Shadowpiece, Tedious Theatre. And the recipient of the award for Best Ensemble is This Bitter Earth, Theatre Works and Bub. For the award for Best Performer, we have 5 nominees. Lachlan Martin for Party Snake, You Mad Productions. Isabella Perversi, Ember, Mad Hatter Films. Elizabeth Brennan, Paradise Lost, The Bloom Shed. Cheryl Ho for Luo Ye Guigun, Getting Home, Cheryl Ho and Rachel Lee. And Ash Flanders for End Of by Ash Flanders. And the recipient of the award for Best Performer is Cheryl Ho, Luo Ye Guigun, Getting Home, Cheryl Ho and Rachel Lee. The next award is for Digital Realisation. And now this is a new award that reflects the ways in which artists have adapted to digital technologies. We're talking about radio dramas, live digital shows, film productions, and work that was pre-recorded and made specifically for digital platforms. Now, in this award category, there are 4 nominees. The first is Paradise Lost, The Bloom Shed. Then Shadowpiece, Tedious Theatre. Luo Ye Guigun, Getting Home, Cheryl Ho and Rachel Lee. And a disorganised Zoom reading of the script for Contagion by Morgan Rose and Katrina Cornwell. And the recipient of the award for digital realisation is Shadowpiece, Tedious Theatre. The final award is for Best Production, and there are 5 nominees. Shadowpiece, Tedious Theatre. Paradise Lost, The Bloom Shed. Eugyeene, Getting Home, Cheryl Ho and Rachel Lee. The Great Australian Play, Theatre Works and Montague Basement. And End of, Ash Flanders. And the recipient for the award for Best Production is Eugyeene, Getting Home, Cheryl Ho and Rachel Lee.
My name is Mama Alto and I'm one of the members of the Cabaret Panel for the Green Room Association Awards. The Cabaret Panel looks at work that is driven by music but also contains philosophical elements, that doesn't involve a fourth wall, or if it does, it's dismantled. And it's a form that particularly lends itself to fabulousness, to hybridization, to unique voices and incredible visions of what the world is and could be. The significance of even having a cabaret panel in the Green Room Awards, which is still a relatively recent development, just really in the last 10 years. But the significance of having a cabaret panel considering work as well as recognising work, it just can't be underestimated. It's part of a wider movement in our communities to recognise and elevate cabaret as a very valid, very legitimate art form that has just as much weight, that has just as much meaning as any capital T theatre form. Particularly because people who are underrepresented in a lot of the arts can find a platform in cabaret that might not be available to them elsewhere. People who are underfunded can find platforms in cabaret. People can create new visions of what art in the world could be through cabaret. So I find it really significant that we're able to have a panel that recognises cabaret artists. Cabaret artists in 2020 really stepped up to deliver work online in exciting and innovative ways. And those works and those artists have really changed things in ways that will benefit the cabaret sector going forward, as well as changing the way we thought about and discussed the awards recognition, the nominees and the recipients. One of the biggest changes is the introduction of a new ongoing award for online achievement in cabaret. Obviously, with the majority of the work we viewed moving online, we were so excited to see the innovative and intriguing ways that cabaret artists adapted our form, a form that traditionally has no fourth wall, and finding ways to overcome the imposed digital fourth wall of a Zoom screen. So for this award for Outstanding Online Achievement in Cabaret, we had 3 nominees. Ali Mcgregor for her work with Ali Mcgregor's Late Night Variety Night, which is a remarkable achievement because it is a long-standing, over a decade-long show with a well-established format, platforming different artists from around the sector, and adapting it into an online format while keeping the spirit of that celebration was an incredible achievement. Our second nominee was Ruben K with Unwind, which was a massive amount of writing. It puzzled the panel because a traditional cabaret contains songs and there were no songs, but the creation and consistency of Ruben's cabaret character that we all know and love in translating into the online format, the ferocity of the wit and incisiveness with which Ruben and his collaborators commented on the modern world mean that we felt this was deserving of a recognition for online achievement. But ultimately our recipient of Outstanding Online Achievement in Cabaret is the amazing emerging talent Lou Wall with Lusical the Musical. The panel really felt that this was one of the pinnacles of online achievement in 2020, of finding ways to take a live art form and make it as new, fresh, exciting and engaging on the screen as it would be off. Congratulations, Lou Wall. One of the big conversations and tough decisions that is always rigorous and exciting every year is the Contribution to Cabaret Award. With 2020 changing what our entire sector looked like, at first we weren't sure if we would continue with this award for this year. However, 2020 and the absence of live performance actually made us look even more keenly at the cabaret sphere. And feeling the absence of what was missing enabled us to recognise someone who we felt ashamed that this recognition hadn't come before from the panel, that it was long overdue. The Contribution to Cabaret Award is recognising this year Simone Pulga. Simone has been the owner and the director of the Butterfly Club for over 10 years now. His personal and professional commitment to the ongoing development and growth of the cabaret sector in Melbourne remains without peer or parallel. That comment is from Cabaret panel member Tom Dickens. It's fair to say that without Simone and his amazing work at the Butterfly Club over many years, the cabaret scene in this country would be a lot poorer. And so for these reasons, the panel is absolutely thrilled and slightly ashamed at how overdue it is to recognise Simone Pulga with the Contribution to Cabaret Award. This year, our recognition for Best Ensemble in a Cabaret is awarded to the People of Cabaret for the People of Cabaret Variety Spectacular presented at Melbourne Fringe and for their body of work throughout the year. One of the most hotly contested awards every year for the Cabaret Panel is Musical Direction. We wanted to recognise an incredible musical director for his work in making sure that online performances continued to have the same vibrancy and musical excitement as live performances. And so, the award for Musical Direction of a Cabaret recognises Sam Keevers for his work on various shows, including Ali McGregor's Late Night Variety Night and Choose Your Own Variety with Ali McGregor. Congratulations, Sam Keevers. Every year, the Cabaret Panel likes to recognise writing amongst its awards. The way that a show is crafted to hold a message, to treasure it and impart it to an audience is a vital part of the cabaret art form. We have 4 nominees this year, all online works, given 2020's ups and downs. The panel wanted to recognise with nominations Reuben Kaye and Andy Ballack for their work on Unwind in Isolation with Reuben Kaye. The sheer amount of work, talent and drive that went into creating this show with brand new material every week for quite a number of weeks presented online from a living room meant so much to the panel and to the greater cabaret community. Tilia Neville is nominated for What Would John Hughes Do? Tilia's work is nearly impossible to categorise, but the nature of amazing poetry that develops and forges new arenas of what cabaret can be meant that the panel found Tilia worthy for a nomination for writing. The panel also kicked out one of our co-chairs for our deliberations and sent her out of the room, and that is Maud Davey, who we have nominated for a piece called Ode to Melbourne that was presented as part of Love Letters to Melbourne, an online cabaret from Finucane and Smith Unlimited. And the level of pathos in the writing that Maud presented to capture how 2020 felt for all of us, to see our streets, our theatres, our public places empty and stripped of life, meant that we decided it would be a crime not to nominate that piece for Best Writing. But the winner, the recipient of the award for Best Writing in a Cabaret for 2020 goes to Lou Wall for Lusical the Musical as part of Melbourne Fringe. Lou also won our Outstanding Achievement in Cabaret award, and these 2 wins are linked. Lou, as a powerhouse writer, wrote not only the words of this show, but also the music, the lyrics, the concept, the structure. And so because they have written a complete creation that became an online work that lost nothing from not being presented in person, a lot of that's down to the construction, which is found in the writing. And so we honour and recognise for Best Writing in a Cabaret in 2020, Lou Wall with Lusical the Musical. In 2020, the Cabaret Panel wanted to recognise 3 nominations for Best Production. The first that we recognise is Choose Your Own Variety with Ali Mcgregor. This was a fantastic collaboration between Ali Mcgregor and Arts Centre Melbourne, which enabled people to get online and experiment with how they viewed a work. We also nominate and recognise the People of Cabaret Variety Spectacular from the People of Cabaret, presented as part of Melbourne Fringe, which was an incredible production with just an enormous amount of talent in sheer number and scale. That really lifted the lid on what great cabaret can and should be. The winner of the award, the recipient of Best Production, is Lou Wall for Lusical the Musical. Lou is someone who the Cabaret Panel have had our eye on for a couple of years as an amazing emerging talent. And the production of Lusical the Musical as a complete online experience really spoke to us at a time when we couldn't attend live cabaret. Congratulations, Lou Wall. And last but not least, the most hotly anticipated, I believe, of the Cabaret Awards at the Green Rooms is for Best Cabaret Artiste. And we chose to recognise her not only because of her incredible talent, her incredible voice, which seems to only grow and improve year after year, but also for her entire ethos around the way that she works. This artist has spent years finding opportunities to platform other artists and providing paid work at different festivals in different variety shows throughout the years. But what impressed us most in 2020 was that her multiple online works, several of which have been mentioned in previous nominations and awards tonight, she continued at a time when many of us, myself and many Cabaret Panel members included, retreated into ourselves to create work and present it online. This artist was determined to find ways to still bring a whole village along and find and make opportunities for many people to shine. And she was not going to let the online migration or the global pandemic stop her. So with a combination of an incredible and unmatched voice and her ethos to including and platforming and making sure no one was left behind, Artiste, Cabaret Artiste for 2020 is awarded to the inimitable Ali Mcgregor. Congratulations, Ali.
My name's Daniela Farinacci and I'm co-chair of the Theatre Companies Panel. So the Theatre Companies Panel, we are so lucky and privileged to get to see all the work that theatre companies make and produce. So that can range. Theatre companies can be large and they can be small and everything in between. So you've got the Melbourne Theatre Company that produces 12 or more shows a year normally, or you might have Eugyeene or Bell Shakespeare who have shorter seasons. So we get quite a vast range of shows that we get to view and enjoy.
That at the core of what we see is text-based work. So on our panel we have quite a range of artists, from writers, directors, dramaturgs, production, all sides of design. Now we have In 2020 we had 8 on the panel, so clearly we aren't quite able to cover all those bases all the time, but we're very, very conscious, so important that the panel keeps rotating and moving, that there's a sense of fluidity and change. So as the industry is changing, so is the panel. Clearly on one level there's a sense of acknowledgement of companies, individuals, or artists, etc., their work, but also it's about dialogue, it's about creating a conversation, not just for us on the panel. We get to sit and talk and dissect and we have some robust discussions at times about the work in front of us, but also it's broader than that. We're also trying to understand and have a conversation about what is actually happening in our industry at this point in time, like what is in the zeitgeist, what are artists feeling need to talk about, to speak to, and hopefully that transcends the room that we're speaking in and actually moves off into the wider industry. Clearly 2020 was a disaster for everyone. It was really difficult to watch this, what was like an avalanche in slow motion, and no one knew quite what to make of it at any given point. So we were all in shock, and we on the panel are all practitioners as well, so we were experiencing that on a personal front as artists, and then looking around and going, wow, it's affecting everyone and the whole. And so in terms of a panel, like how do you speak about theatre when it's actually there's nothing happening? So as a panel, it felt that we came to a standstill. But having said that, we felt really that it was so important to actually keep the panel alive and well and to meet. So we still continue to meet regularly, even though there may have been no shows to talk to, but we would talk about what was happening. It was tricky. There was lots of conversation. How do we deal with this year? And Theatre Companies Panel, we were kind of lucky in a way because we had already seen quite a number of shows before the lockdown, live shows. So we had those to consider. But then during the rest of the year, it was mainly online work, and not many of them, to be fair. Some online work, some audio work that we were viewing. But it seemed odd to be comparing those. How would, what were we to do, have separate categories? So we discussed all of this. In the end, we came back to our criteria, which we felt that we needed to stick to the integrity of our core criteria. What we did was rather than nominations, which just didn't feel right, we selected five recipients. All of those 5 recipients, their work was amazing, outstanding, incredible and wonderful, and all of the criteria that we would normally apply to winners, they exist here. So I just want to say that it's not some kind of compensation. 2020 was a difficult year, but we were still able to find recipients that we wanted to acknowledge, that fulfilled what we always hoping for, really. So Theatre Companies Panel have 5 more traditional awards, and they go across online and live theatre. And they are Outstanding Writing Adaptation for the Australian Stage. It goes to Dan Giannoni and Christos Tsiolkas for Loaded, Malthouse Theatre. Outstanding Sound Design, Daniel Nixon, Loaded, Malthouse Theatre. Outstanding Performance, 2 awards. Nikki Shields, Home I'm Darling, Melbourne Theatre Company. Charles Wu, Torch the Place, Melbourne Theatre Company. And finally, Outstanding Design, Costume, Renee Mulder, Home I'm Darling, Melbourne Theatre Company. We also want to acknowledge outstanding advocacy for the theatre sector during 2020. Anna Treglowan, The Impossible Project, Australian Arts Amidst COVID-19, Australian Production Design Guild, Tony Burke, Chloe Dallymore, Martin Foley, Live Performance Australia, Media Entertainment and Arts Alliance,
National Association of the Visual Arts and Theatre Network Australia. Thank you so much.
Well, my name's Will Conyers and I'm the chair of the Green Room Awards panel. We award music theatre. Now, some people may go, well, how do you define music theatre? Well, music theatre is where the narrative of a story is propelled by the languages of dance, song, of course, music, and all the elements of technical and mechanical theatres that are, a part of the world. We look at the smallest of productions in terms of independent productions, which may be two-handers produced by one of those people sometimes, and then we also look at the blockbusters. The Music Theatre panel of the Green Room Awards has to comprise elite level practitioners across so many fields, whether it be production design, production management, whether it be wardrobe, whether it be set, whether it be sound, whether it be musical direction, choreography. So getting a composite into a not unwieldy group that is, you can get around a table and it works, is quite difficult. And so the selection process, when people ask if they can be on the panel, sometimes we have to look at gender diversity as well and pick to just get so that matrix is always solved. It always has to, we always have to have sufficient representation. Anyone in the business knows when you get that compliment that gets in, it really means something, whether it's been a selection of words by a particular artist or they've noticed something about your work that is precious to you. I like to think that what a Green Room Award represents is the notion that we noticed and it's that good. I think the most important thing about the year that we've all just been through is this 2020 was an enlightenment, and it was a flourishing of the sort of creativity that makes your heart dance. So it was very moving to watch, and it was made us all on our music theatre panel feel pretty bloody responsible. One of the things that happened very, very quickly amongst all the panel chairs and the executive of the Green Room Awards was there was a decision made that we needed to show care and we needed to be broad in our focus and to absolutely make sure that the Green Room Awards was seen to be, the old acting rule. You accept the offer or you block the offer. So in this case, what we were doing was, those exercises of you absolutely accept the offer, yes and, that exercise, all that sort of stuff. I think that really, really just made us look at things. And if we did put up a draft set of categories, but if that had needed to be doctored, we would have doctored it based on what was submitted, certainly not to deter anyone. The Music Theatre panel is in a permanent state of a 24/7 meeting. we have our online chat room. And so we were talking about the sort of things that were already popping up like corks on a lake, the sort of little mini offerings that, you know, and so that gave us a sort of a draft shape of what our award categories could be, with generality for the latecomers. So we had to think, what haven't we seen, but what's coming? Okay, so our first category, celebration of online performance. The company, I Need You to See Me, Vidya Makan. The company of Les Miserables for Black Lives Matter, musical mugwumps, James Cutler and Lala Barlow. The companies, The Art of Making Art, watch this. The 23 companies of musical mugwumps, James Cutler and Lala Barlow. Rhonda Birchmore, Rhonda's Rewind, Rhonda Birchmore and James Carroll. James Carroll for Rhonda's Rewind. Vidya Makan, I Need You to See Me. Stacey Louise Camilleri, musical mugwumps. Sonia Suarez, Nick McInerney, Dean Dryberg, Mel Hillman and Nick Simpson-Deeks for The Art of Making Art, watch this. The gong goes to Rhonda Birchmore and James Carroll for Rhonda's Rewind. What we didn't expect in the year was that we were going to have an initiative that was all about developing new work. Obviously, people were writing and because they were stuck at their computers. So for the contribution to development and new work, the Hope Initiative, Christian Cavallo, Robert Tripolino, Meg Dale and James Miller. So obviously we were talking about an industry that needed a little bit of TLC. So we created a category called the Music Theatre Community Building or Advocacy Initiative. And the two nominees here are musical mugwumps, James Cutler and Lala Barlow, and the Hope Initiative, which was a writing initiative, Christian Cavallo, Robert Tripolino, Meg Dale and James Miller. And the Green Room gong goes to the Hope Initiative. And of course, people took the time to look back over their work and their dossier of their achievements, and we've got two for recognition of retrospective content. May I say that both of these submissions were magnificently produced, and this was very, very difficult for the panel. The Art of Making Art, watch this, Chrisanne Fox, Chloe Greaves, Zoe Rouse, Emily Collette, Rhiannon Nerving, Rob Sawinski, Eugyeene Teh, Christine Logan Bell, Sarah Tulloch and Milked Studios. And the second nominee, Rhonda Birchmore and James Carroll for Rhonda's Rewind. And not speaking retrospectively, but speaking rather currently, the gong goes to Rhonda Birchmore and James Carroll for Rhonda's Rewind.
Hi there, my name is Shauntai Batzke. I am a Wiradjuri soprano and a principal artist with Short Black Opera. And this year I have been asked to be on the exciting Green Room panel for the opera category. 2020, the year that was. And can you believe it's actually continuing even now? I was asked to be part of this wonderful doco, to come into the studio and to talk with the great lights and stage, but I'm here at home in my studio with the natural lights. And as you know, we are in lockdown at the moment for another 7 days here in Victoria. And like a lot of my other peers, we really don't know what's happening. In the next week, I'm in rehearsals for Pawang Lifts the Sky with Victorian Opera, making my Victorian Opera debut, and as a principal artist of Short Black Opera. And we don't know what's going to be happening. I think, it's a great reflection of, well, what I'm saying is a great reflection of what's happening right now, where things are up in the air. But one good thing is that there were some amazing, at least for last year in 2020, there was some incredible online performances and all these Zoom performances and incredible ways to still keep connected and still share our incredible gifts. It's quite a different world we live in now, but the beautiful thing with artists is that we can always create. In opera, there's a variety of ways to express this particular craft. And I think with our panel, we don't exclude it just to be traditional operas, but new works and reimagined works and amateur operas as well. I think from my experience thus far, we cover all areas of operatic performances. Sorry about the dog. I just joined the Green Room Awards this year in 2021, and most of the time when I go see an opera, the main things I would look for is the soprano an amazing singer and can she act? That's what stands out to me. However, being part of the panel, that's not just looking for the best soprano or if she can hit the high C. It's about really taking note of the full production, of the staging, of the costumes, of the acting, of the team that do the behind the stage work. It really helps you to appreciate the performances so much more because you really zone in on the efforts of every single part of each production. And I think I'm really enjoying watching shows even more now that I have to be conscious of that. Some of the shows that I've seen already, the costumes were just extraordinary, and the staging, as an artist and as a writer and a singer, it's very inspiring. So we've come to the very exciting part of the interviews, and as one does when they go to awards, they dress up a little bit. So even though I'm at home here in my studio, I thought I'll do the same. Firstly, my hair, and now the glasses, because I'm reading some very important things. There were only limited online productions to warrant the giving of the awards, but the opera panel would very much like to acknowledge the following achievements within the opera sector. Programming, innovative and adaptive programming, allowing their festival to not only run, but reach new audiences. And the recipient is the Yarra Valley Opera Festival, Gertrude Opera. Number 2, venue acknowledgement, providing vital performance opportunities and income for Melbourne's classical musicians. And the recipient is Melbourne Digital Concert Hall. And number 3 is audience engagement. Through extensive and varied online content, this included new compositions, recitals, historical retrospectives, and educational content. And the recipient is Victorian Opera. Congratulations, everyone. What a year we had. So proud of you all.
My name's Dan Koop. I'm an artist, I'm a producer. I've always worked in the performing arts sector and love it here in Melbourne, my hometown. So it's great to be the co-chair of the Contemporary and Experimental Performance section. We get to see all the fun stuff, by which I mean kind of sometimes the weird stuff. While opera, while dance, while all these other things have really clear historical definitions, it's in the title, contemporary, so it's new, it's the stuff that's being figured out right now, and it is experimental. We don't necessarily know what we're going to walk into as an audience member, but I guess our artists are also pushing the boundaries of what contemporary art and our culture can be. So yeah, weird, but absolutely always fun, and I learn a lot from the artists. The panel's excellent because sometimes we see each other in foyers and give each other a wink and say hello and catch up. We always do big discussions at the end of the year as well, and the breadth of knowledge in our panel is amazing. Because it's not form specific what we do, we have people who know about children's work, about puppetry, about contemporary art music, people who are experts in design, live art. It really depends because there's no set kind of like work that we're going to see every time we step into a room or out. Often not into a room, just out onto the streets or into a new space. So we need to have that breadth in order to really interrogate the work and figure out what the artists were really trying to talk to us about. I think the importance of what we do is that we try and reflect the importance of what we think the artists of Melbourne do and the performers of Melbourne do. It's not about us, it's about them. So we really try and see work to understand what the contemporary stories are, the contemporary themes, the issues of concern that are being raised by living artists. And so the importance of that for me is that they're often, whether they're kind of about Melbourne or about Victoria, or they're always about our times. So they might not just be kind of parochially Melbourne, but they are absolutely Melbourne in that they are of today. They're of the world that I live in. They're the people who I'm catching public transport with or sharing foyers with at other times. So the importance of that is catching up with where we're at today and acknowledging those people who are actually kind of a little bit ahead of where we're at today. That's often the people who are winning those awards. I've always admired the Green Room Awards. So if someone said that they got nominated, you go, wow, that's a great body of work. And often it might have been, oh, wish I saw it, or yes, I saw that and it was good, well done. And that's just for the nomination. So whether you kind of receive the nod or not, it's about kind of peers acknowledging peers. And what's so good about that is that that the people who have been on the panels or who are seeing the work are kind of putting as much love and care into it as you might have done as an artist. I'm lucky I've received one, and when I received it, it was also just this wonderful acknowledgement for the people that I made it with, because there's no solo artists really, I think. It's always a team, and our art forms in performance are always collaborative, so it's not a singular nod, it's always about the team and it's about the kind of culture and the space that it's come out of. So. Yeah, for me, it's acknowledging that our work is ephemeral, but it lasts, it echoes. 2020 was a ride. Look, initially, a lot of us were working on shows, or we were working in venues or working for presenters. And so I think that initial shock was just the show wasn't going on. And that was not a feeling that we're really comfortable with in our industry. We really persist and we push, and we know even though it's scary sometimes, we get to opening night and we go through, and we're good at that. And so to be faced with something that we couldn't push through was pretty hard. And there's a lot of friends that we couldn't hang out with and share time with, and they're the people who inspire us. They're the people who keep us going in those tough times as well. So we're tough times without our usual crew. And I think one of the things I missed the most was foyers. It's not actually seeing the show, although they're important. It was the random community of people who happened to be there that night. And those people who you didn't necessarily call up and say, let's go tonight, but you saw them, they're your friends. They know somebody else, so you meet somebody else, and that chain letter goes on. And I missed the foyer and just, not necessarily the gossip, but the care, because we all celebrate these little things together in a foyer. Like, oh, I saw your name on that new list, that's amazing, you got the grant, or I've heard a whisper about your collaboration, sounds like it's very intriguing. So to miss out on all those kind of whispers and that kind of care that we share with each other was kind of sad when we needed it. In a normal year, we'll kind of notice some maybe formal themes. So there's a lot of work for young people this year, or a lot of work for intergenerational audiences, or here's a lot of site-specific things. So in a way, 2020 responded already. So there was a big thing and a big subtext. So that response was kind of what linked things together sometimes, not necessarily the form. So it was really amazing to understand what the threads and the nuanced threads of the year were. Not just that we're facing lockdown and pandemic, but what do we now think about? And a lot of them were social justice, a lot of them were equality, a lot of them were about, hey, things haven't been so crash hot after all. Maybe we don't want to return to this thing that we had so recently. What are we rushing forwards into? So those are really interesting questions that don't really speak to you in form. They're kind of, form's just a vessel to get it to you. Well, the panel's, gosh, what's beyond democratic? Because democratic processes still have a linchpin, a leader, a party, a faction. I think it was just very flat and very conversational for a long time. And eventually we come to this moment where we go, do we have consensus? Do we feel like that's right? Does it fit together? Do these things talk to each other across the breadth of the work that we've seen? Not just do they stand out amongst their peers, are they actually coming together as a community? That's when we knew we had it right. And so there is a kind of like little bit of voting, but it's really about kind of finding this consensus through conversation. So the Contemporary and Experimental Performance Panel honours all the artists in our community, and especially those who are part of an extraordinary 72 works who nominated themselves in 2020. We've made a decision to create only a list of finalists and not award a singular winner across these categories. We believe that this is the best possible expression of a year of constant recalibration, collective action, profound care, resistance and protest, advocacy and survival that reflects contemporary and experimental artistic sector at all times, but most acutely in 2020. This is an extraordinary community of people and practice, and we are proud to be a part of it. First category, works, with no distinction between those that were before COVID or post-COVID. A red square. A suffocating, choking feeling. A digital experiment. Bonanza. Brunswick East Entertainment Festival. Club Fringe at Home, Fringer Vision. Fast fashion. Huru Hara. Let's Take Over 2020. Mountain Goat Mountain. Paoneer Drive. Resounding. The Crying Room. And when it rains, I feel like eating Gyeon. Our second category. Works that didn't happen. Those that couldn't, those that wouldn't, and Casey Jenkins. Our third category. Artist-led actions. Actions that showed leadership, foregrounded care, voice of the community, and made urgent change. Australian Artist Amid COVID-19 Facebook group. Big Day In. Black Lives Matter protests. Community Transmissions Online Art Residency. Dance It Out. Digital Dance Clubs and Victorian Seniors Festival. Edge Ensemble. High-Vis Practice Exchange. House of Muchness Workshop Program. Listening. Manus Recording Project Collective. The Generator. And we have a special award this year. It's a joint award on behalf of the Contemporary and Experimental Panel and the Independent Theatre Panel. And the award is Making the Impossible Possible in 2020. And that goes to Melbourne Fringe and of course the entire community who makes Melbourne Fringe. And we have a special award. It's the Geoffrey Millen Award for Outstanding Contribution to Contemporary and Experimental Performance. And it goes to the amazing Erin Millen. What a contribution to our sector is such a huge part of it. Thank you.
So I'm Philipa Rothfield. I'm at the moment chair of the dance panel of the Green Room Awards. Well, mainly we look at contemporary dance, but it's become a question for us, as it has kind of in a lot of locations around the world. What is it that constitutes contemporary dance? Like there's an historical element, but also is it all Western dance or is it non-Western dance? And how can we kind of open up to that question in what it is that we invite people to submit and be looked at. We also look at ballet, we look at butoh, sometimes we look at circus and also disability arts and artists and performances to open up the question of what is the proper body of dance and what kinds of bodies can move and therefore can dance. Well, like all live performance, and like Green Room really covers a range of live performances. As there's a performance theorist called Peggy Phelan, and she said one of the kind of features of liveness and live performance is it's ephemeral. So you have an event, people perform, others get to experience it, and then the event is it over? How do we mark the event? How do we recognise and acknowledge the event? And there's lots of different ways in which that happens. I think the event leaves a trace within the performers and within the audience, so it never fully disappears. But at the same time, there are other ways that I think we can mark an event or acknowledge it or recognise it. So how I think of Green Room Awards is it's one way of marking the event of performance and drawing value from it and recognising value and asserting value. And, it's not an ultimate thing. Like, I think, we're only a panel, we're limited by our experience and understanding. So I think the awards are a kind of provisional thing and they're historical just in the same way that events and performances are. We had to find a way to come together, and that was a big thing because suddenly we're not in the same room. So how do you as a group think together? How do you make decisions together? People were reeling with the impact on their own lives and on their own forms of artistic practice. So these were all questions that we were trying to look at in the midst of business not as usual. And we tried to work through different ways of thinking about that. But the strongest feeling, I think, from the panel was we can't really go ahead and give awards. There was very little dance happening. It's not that there was no dancing happening, and it really is important to recognise the imagination and tenacity of those people who continued to make work and kind of reformulated the topographies of their own practice. But we had a kind of precedent, I suppose, of giving awards, so we had to decide what to do about that. So the cultural landscape within which dance occurs has really become quite energised lately. And so there were elements in our community that became really quite politicised and self-organising, and that really is a wonderful thing, to form a political community, to become a group, to talk to each other, to think through together what are your issues. And there's a whole lot of political questions around diversity, around representation, around violence and precarity and vulnerability and neoliberalism, and they're all issues that affect the field of the arts and the status of the arts within Australian society and the role of the state in relation to that. So they're all elements that come together and that we attempted to take stock of. Well, a big thing that affected us, like it did everybody, was the whole issue of connection. Like, how would we connect? How do we come together as a thinking body? How do we come to decisions? And we weren't together in the same room, and that's a big thing. So our connection was mediated, like it was for everyone, through email, through Zoom, and we had to find ways of thinking through together what to do at the same time as so many members of our panel were impacted by this lack of performance. And people had really full calendars, their careers were going forward, and then suddenly the rug pulled from under their feet. Some did find ways of continuing to practice, but it depends what your role is and what you do professionally. So I think the first thing to say is, like, us as a group are intimately affected by what's going on, and then trying to think through how we deal with this. So I think to that end, some people felt, how can we possibly give awards when there's hardly any performance going on? So one of the first things that we decided to do was to roll over the much lesser number of works, but hooray to the people who managed, and well done. Roll over those works into 2021 to consider them as part of our 2021 cohort for awards. So that was one line of flight that we took. And then the other one was to really open up ourselves to what makes us possible as a panel, and that is our dance community. So we really had quite a lot of conversation about this, that we wanted to honour and to recognise and to incorporate and activate who we are as a dance community. And 2020 saw quite a bit of politicisation within our community. There was a kind of formation of a body, a corporate body, an advocacy body, but also a group of people talking amongst themselves and to each other, thinking through who are they and what is their role as artists in society, how can they support each other, but also how can they activate themselves as a group. So it was a form of activism, which is wonderful. And other things have been around the whole issue which I mentioned earlier about the nature and status of contemporary dance and the role of the Western canon, colonial practices as they're articulated here, within a diverse and multicultural community. And how can we open up to that? How can we extend our own modes of literacy to acknowledge and broaden what counts as dance and what we take in as dance? So on the question of community, it's not like there's a given community. We had to really reach out to people and find ways to communicate to people, email them, contact them, put notices out to ask people to nominate themselves for our growing and living list of community members. And part of that is we want to say thank you to that community and recognise everything that it does in making this field of art that we love. And it's an extensive list that we got together. It's provisional. We acknowledge the risk of people that we couldn't reach, but in reaching out to people, we did say, please share it, and that this is an inclusive list, and we hope that it can be as big as it can be. I think for our generation, 2020 and its ongoingness, if not to name the global pandemic and everything that's happened, I think it's a reminder that we don't know what the future is, and that there can be really big things happen and forces that are beyond us, that ask for things that we hadn't imagined. But I also think that we have critiques. There are things that we don't like about the world. There's things that we want to make better. And I also think that these kind of epochal shifts can give a bit of impetus to the desire to change things and to let go of things that have a kind of ongoing energy and to make an attempt to really shift them. And I can see that with feminism, for example, with the Black Lives Matter movement, which has a real history. It's not like it sprang from nothing in 2020, but what is it that we can do? What's the field of possibility that we can shift? And I think those questions have an artistic register as well, that okay, what about myself as an artist? What is it that I want to do, can do? What can I find myself doing artistically? And that's about the field of creation in the midst of, you know, the field of possibility and the materiality of the world.
Hey, this is Sapidah. Sapidah Kian. Between myself and Eugyeene Teh, we're the co-presidents of the Green Room Awards Association, and I'm just calling to announce the Achievement Awards. The first one I want to speak to is the Technical Achievement Awards. So this year, the Technical Achievement Award goes to Bronwyn Pringle, who's a lighting designer and theatre maker. The Technical Achievement Award acknowledges what we might call like the back of house elements. So things like lighting, sound composition, design, or other technical areas that are maybe not always embodied by a performer. So, congratulations, Bronwyn. The second award I want to tell you about is the Lifetime Achievement Award, and this year it's been awarded to 2 people. The first person is Rachel Mazza, AM, and Rachel is an actor, a director, and the artistic director of Ilbidgery Theatre Company. And the second person is Richard Watts, who is an arts writer and broadcaster. The Lifetime Achievement Award is different to the Technical Achievement Award in that it may go to a performer, a teacher, arts leader, or any other person who's made a significant contribution to the Victorian performing arts sector. It's really about acknowledging somebody's long-term contribution to the sector, someone who's influenced and impacted a whole new generation of practitioners. Congratulations, Rachel and Richard.